Hey everyone, for this discussion, you're going to listen to me read an article, or you may choose to read it yourself. I'll provide a link and then answer some questions about the article. So, the article is called Rare Plant Hunters Race Against Time to Save at Risk Species. So, scientists rappel down cliffs and trek through forests to collect plants and seeds. This is Steve Perlman. He rappels down a cliff in the Wailau Valley of the Hawaiian island Molokai. He's a botanist who has spent at least 45 years searching for and protecting rare plants. This article is by Sharon Ustok. Somewhere in the windswept cliff off the edge of the Hawaiian island of Kauai grows a plant that looks like a cabbage on a stick. It's the last wild plant of its kind, and its exact location is a closely guarded secret. Hawaiians call it alua, and even on this island chain known for its exotic greenery, the alula stands out. Its rosette of wide, leathery leaves sits atop a short, bulbous stem. Creamy yellow flowers give off a honeysuckle scent. The alula used to be an important lei plant. A lei is a traditional garland of flowers worn around the neck. The alula's flowers could either be strung or woven into leis, which were made as gifts of love for special occasions, says Kawika Winter. Winter is an ecologist and a Hawaiian who works at the Hawaii National Estuarine Research Reserve on Oahu. As Winter well knows, the days when Hawaiians could use alula flowers in their leis are long gone. Alula was once a common sight in Kauai and on the neighboring island of Niihau. This was before people brought plant-munching goats, pigs, and rats to Hawaii. People also brought plants from other places. These plants tended to crowd out native Hawaiian ones, including the alula. 40 years ago, the alula hadn't yet dwindled to one last lonely plant, and there was still a small population clinging to the cliff face. Steve Perlman rappelled down the cliff to collect their seeds. Perlman arrived just in time. He is a field botanist with the Plant Extinction Prevention Program at the University of Hawaii in Manaus. Perlman is based at the National Tropical Botanical Gardens in Kalaheo, so he gave his seeds to horticulturists working there. Horticulturists are experts in cultivating plants. The ones that NTBG knew how rare alula already were when Perlman handed over his seeds 40 years ago. They were eager to grow lots of them and save the plant from extinction. But there was a problem. The alula's natural pollinator is the fabulous green sphinx moth. Yes, that's its real name. And there weren't enough moths to do the job. That's because so much of the land had been cleared for houses and food crops, removing the plants that the moths needed for food. Today, there are very, very few fabulous green sphinx moths left. The NTBG's horticulturists had a solution to the missing moth problem: pollinate the alula by hand. They dipped small paintbrushes into the pollen of some greenhouse alula flowers and dabbed it onto the other stigmas, which were the female reproductive parts of other alula flowers. It worked. They grew so many alula plants that they're now sold around the world as a houseplant called the Hawaiian palm. Alula has also been reintroduced to wild places where they once grew, but these aren't technically considered wild plants. That's because humans must constantly tend to them. Today, the plant is listed as endangered, and it's against the law for anyone to damage or kill it. This listing, along with Perlman's efforts, has been a life preserver for the alula. We won't lose this species now, says Perlman. It's a success story. At least he's pretty sure it's a success story, but sometimes he wonders. Winter is not so sure either. As both point out, alula plants would die off if humans stopped hand-pollinating them. True success will come when they can be planted in the wild and survive on their own, she says. Researchers and conservationists are trying, he says. Hopefully our grandchildren will see these clinging to the cliffs once again. For now, constant hand pollination is better alternative, extinction. More than 130 plant species have gone extinct in Hawaii since people began keeping records a couple hundred years ago. Perlman has personally witnessed 20 species go extinct in the state since he started hunting for rare plants 45 years ago. It is, he says, like losing 20 friends. Here's the bigger picture. Hawaii is an extreme example of a place where native plants are in trouble, but that's not alone. Plants are at risk around the world. In fact, 1 in 5 of the world's plants are at risk for extinction. This is according to the 2016 report from the Royal Botanical Gardens. Kew is in London, England. Michael Ray is an ecologist who works for the RBG. Like Perlman, he is a rare plant hunter. He travels to hard-to-reach places to collect rare plants or their seeds, hoping to save them from extinction. In August 2016, Way was part of a team that hiked to a remote area of the northern Oregon to collect seeds from the brewer spruce. This is a rare evergreen tree with droopy branches covered in curtains of needle-like leaves. Its seed-bearing cones measure 8 to 15 centimeters, 3 to 6 inches longer than most other North American spruce cones. The brewer spruce is native to Northwest North America and one of the rarest trees on the continent. Its greatest threats are wildfires and climate change, which are causing temperatures to rise on the cool north-facing summits where it grows. The tree prefers chilly conditions. It's a survival from the glacial period 10,000 years ago, says Way. Despite its longevity, the brewer spruce's days may be numbered. As temperatures continue to rise on its native mountainsides, the trees will have nowhere to go, says Way. Today, the brewer spruce are only found in 6 places in Oregon. There are probably several thousand left. Most of them grow in remote areas on national forest land, but there are no laws protecting the brewer spruce. The only thing keeping these trees safe is their isolated location. Way felt it was important to collect seeds before these trees disappear altogether. With the help of the colleagues from the U.S. Forest Service, he recruited a group of arborists who are experts in cultivating trees and shrubs, and parachuting firefighters known as smoke jumpers. The arborists and smoke jumpers are skilled climbers and easily clambered 10 meters, about 33 feet, up into the tree's crowns. They secured themselves at the top with a climbing harness and dropped cones into their sacks tied to their waist. Down below, Way waited to catch the sacks. Although altogether they climbed 60 trees and collected 3,000 cones. Half of the cones were sent to a seed bank run by the U.S. Department of Agriculture's National Center for Genetic Resource Preservation. That's in Fort Collins, Colorado. Way took the other half back with him to the RBG's seed bank in Wakehurst, England. Seed banks safely store seeds from many species. Now, if the brewer spruce dies out in the wild, scientists will still have the seeds to grow and study, says Way. But like Perlman, he worries that's not enough. It doesn't help us protect them in their natural habitat, he says. What's at stake when plants vanish? The disappearance of the brewer spruce or any other plants could have important consequences. Throughout history, plants have often been sources of medicine, says Way. If they die out before we understand their value, we'll never know what illnesses may have been treated by plants. Not only that, but plants are at the bottom of the food chain, he adds. That means they feed other organisms. The diversity of plant means a diversity of animals. A healthy ecosystem needs this, he says. Of course, we can only protect the rare plants we know about. That's why Aaron Floden was excited to discover a new and rare species of Trillium in 2012. Trillium is a common plant genus. A genus is a close group of closely related species. The genus Trillium produces 3-petaled flowers in shades of red, purple, pink, white, yellow, or green. Trilliums are found across eastern North America, in parts of western North America, and also in eastern Asia. Despite people thinking North America is well explored, our collection of this Trillium was the first ever, says Floden. He's a plant taxonomist who works in the Missouri Botanical Gardens in St. Louis. A plant taxonomist is a scientist who studies the origins of plants and the relationships between them. Scientists have identified roughly 50 different Trillium species. Some are rarer than others. Floden named the ones he identified in 2012 Trillium tennescense, after the eastern Tennessee property where he found it. That property belongs to a local high school biology teacher and his wife. They got in touch with Floden when they noticed a plant growing near their driveway that puzzled them. A few days after that call, Floden drove out to the couple's rural home to see if he could solve the mystery. Sure enough, near their driveway, he found a small, delicate plant with 3 petaled flowers. The petals were a greenish yellow, turning a dark reddish brown at the base. Bending down to smell the flower, he caught a whiff of plastic and petroleum, which he describes as an old-fashioned boot polish smell. His first thought was to wonder what kind of pollinator would be attracted to that smell. Different trillium species have different smells. One smells like dirty, stinky feet, and another like an unclean rodent cage, says Floden. Several trillium species smell like decaying meat, but some have good smells like freshly baked banana bread or lemon or even fermenting apples. Floden's second thought was to marvel at his luck. It was very exciting to be the first botanist and one of maybe a dozen people in the whole world to have seen what is likely to be a new species of trillium, he says. He dug up a few plants to study back in his lab. He measured different parts of the plants and compared them to known species. He found the trillium from Tennessee were different. The shape and the size of the plant's male and female reproductive parts were different from other trilliums. This made him strongly suspect that this was a new species. To be sure, he analyzed the plant's DNA. DNA is a long spiral-shaped molecule inside nearly every cell of living things. This molecule carries genetic information, instructions for how the plant or animal or human looks and functions, and whether it smells like boot polish. We get the DNA out of a small piece of the plant. A piece about the size of your thumbnail is enough. He found the sequence or order of the trillium's DNA was a bit different from other trillium's DNA, and in fact was enough to be a separate species. Floden was the first scientist to identify Trillium tennescense, but it's not the only reason he was excited. Identifying a plant meant that he and others might eventually use the finding to protect the trillium's habitat. That's because the law protecting plants and animals are often based on how rare they are. Floden suspects that the Trillium tennescense is very rare. Despite looking carefully in the area for more of them, he and his colleagues found the flowers growing in just 4 more places. One of those places has since been plowed for a horse pasture. The 4 remaining sites total about 2 hectares or 5 acres. Floden doesn't think he'll find any more flowers inside or outside of Tennessee. He worries for the plant's future because laws protect the trillium only if it grows on land belonging to the state of Tennessee. There, it is protected against digging, picking, and destructing. Since all the plants are on private property, anything can be done to the land or to the plant, says Floden. This does not provide the kind of protection something so rare needs. But that doesn't mean plant hunters like Floden, Way, and Perlman will stop trying. The trio is committed to scouring the ends of the earth for endangered species and trying their best to save them. So now that you have heard or maybe read on your own this article about rare plant hunters racing against time to save at-risk species, I want you to answer these questions. Number 1, what is the Alula plant and what makes it special? Number 2, according to the story, what was Steve Perlman's role in saving the Alula from likely extinction? Number 3, what is the major threat facing the Alula plant? Number 4, what fraction of the world's plants are at risk for extinction, according to the report from the Royal Botanical Gardens, Kew, or RBG? Number 5, what are the major threats to the Brewer spruce, and how is Michael Way working to protect the species? Number 6, according to the story, what are 2 reasons why it's important to save the endangered plant species? Number 7, what is a genus? Number 8, where did Aaron Floden find the species of trillium that he identified in 2012? Number 9, what is the first thing Floden noticed when he found Trillium tennescense? And number 10, why is Floden excited to identify Trillium tennescense?